Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I'm a librarian at the Cosby Library and Community Commons. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you some techniques that you might want to use with your Adult Craft to Go kit for January. This kit is all about your own creativity and your own personal expression, so I'm not going to dictate exactly what kind of project you might want to do with the supplies that are included in that kit. It is totally up to you. So what is included in your kit are 3 different colors of yarn. You have about 90 yards total. You'll also receive 2 plastic yarn needles and a 12-inch dowel rod. But you're welcome to go out and get more supplies to add to those, and you can go even further with all sorts of creative ideas. So I've posted separate videos on how to make pom-poms out of yarn, how to make these little birds, how to make these feathers. And then in this video, I'll be showing you some basic techniques that you can use to make all sorts of different projects, mostly wall hangings, but maybe also a few other things. I have created a Pinterest board that you can go out and look at, and I will be putting a link to that in the description for this video, and that will contain even more ideas for all the different things that you can do with yarn. And there's literally dozens of different projects that you can make just using yarn and a few other simple supplies. So let's get started on just a couple of basic techniques that might come up when you are working on your yarn projects. One of them is the Lark's Head knot, and that's what I've started with right here. So the Lark's Head knot is really simple. The one thing you have to be careful of is if you've already done some, like you see right here, it's actually two-sided. So there's a side with a bead, and then there's a side where just the string is showing. So if you're going to put on another string, you have to be careful that when you put it on, you don't put it on backwards. And so now here you can see I've put this new one on, and the strings are showing and not the bead. So I'll probably want to take this one off and flip it around. Whoops, excuse me. To where when I put it on, that bead will be showing. Unless it's a stylistic choice that you want to switch it and make the other side show, but most of the time if you have a long stretch of Lark's Head knots, they're all facing the same direction. So that's one technique right there. I'm going to show you an even more advanced version of the Lark's Head knot that you will use when you have one at one end and then you need to anchor this string at the other end, and that's for making a sort of macrame design that I will show you here in just a minute. You can use this Lark's Head knot to go over a dowel rod, for example, and create sort of a fringed wall hanging. That's actually one of the projects that we did with our teens in 2020, and we have a separate video on YouTube showing that project. And if you were to do that project, you can also do the Lark's Head with multiple strands at the same time. So I'm going to show this sideways because it's kind of long. So here's a project using that same Lark's Head knot, and I've just used 2 strands at a time instead of 1. And so you can see that makes a thicker bead, very decorative looking, and I've just done that using different colors across this whole project. So I've seen lots of examples of this on the internet using different colors. You can use the colors of your home country, you can use the colors of your favorite sports team or your school, your favorite Hogwarts house, whatever happens to appeal to you. Now I've tried to make some simpler projects because I know not everybody has the ornate style that I have. I like to decorate everything pretty much. So if it can be decorated, I will decorate it. So the projects that I first made have little birds all over them and pom-poms. I couldn't resist putting at least one pom-pom on this. But you can go much more sedate than what I show with my projects, and so I did want to give you an example of that. And let's say that I didn't want my fringe on here to be kind of uneven, which it is right now, so I haven't trimmed my fringe here. All you have to do to trim your fringe, and you could trim it a number of different ways. You could trim it into a point. You could do more of kind of a a pennant, a double point, an inverted triangle. I'm going to just do a simple angle for this. And there's a number of ways you can do that. You can hang your project and cut it while it's hanging. You can use a ruler or a cardboard template. I have a pretty good eye, so I like to just do my trimming by hand, just eyeballing it. But it's up to you. If you're not as confident with creating a straight line just by eyeballing it, you are welcome to use a template. So you want to kind of visualize what you want to do ahead of time. And then very carefully, without moving anything too much, find the sharp section of your scissors. And just gradually trim. And you can always come back later and trim again if it doesn't turn out exactly how you want. Or again, you could make a template to either lay underneath or lay on top before you even start this trimming. So there, I've trimmed. I can lay it all out again, see if I like my work. I could then at this point go and hang it on the wall and see if I'm happy with what I've done. But that looks pretty good. So that's always an option for a finishing touch. You can either leave something sort of ragged looking, or you can trim it off nice and sharp. And I will have pictures of all of my example projects at the end of this video. So there are some things that you can do with lark's heads. Let's move on to something a little bit more complicated. And that is this project. Now this hoop is quite large, so I might not be able to get this entire project on here. But here is a simple macrame project. You can see that at the top, it does start with those lark's heads. Let me turn it sideways here. So that's how these top strings were attached. And then also at the bottom, you can see something that looks like a lark's head as well. So how does that happen? I'm going to show you here in just a minute. The rest of this is just simply wrapping one of these wooden hoops with yarn and securing it off with a square knot, and then using my yarn needle to tuck in the ends of the yarn. So that's one of the things you can use your yarn needle for. And then I did trim the fringe on this as well to come to a point. So that was a little finishing touch that I added to this. Let me show you a much more decorative version of this that I did. So again, left to my own devices, I get pretty ornate with my styles. So here's the original piece that I did that's much more in keeping with my decorative style and my decorative inclinations. And you can see here that I added some pom-poms at the top. I made the tassels a little bit bigger, and I braided the fringe at the bottom instead of trimming it. And I left the sides here bare. But it's the same basic technique. It's still somewhat reversible, although this one has more of a front side than the other one. So this one really is meant to be seen mostly from this side, whereas this one, if you leave it a little bit plainer, you could actually hang this somewhere where it can be seen in the round, and the pattern is a little bit different on one side versus the other side. So let's see how you might complete this project. I've already gotten it started a little bit here. So all this project is a series of these lark's head knots at the top. So for this particular example, I'm just going to have 5 up here at the top. So you'll want to have all of those attached to begin with. So again, I'm just putting that loop behind and then drawing through the 2 ends of the string and pulling it tight. And then doing it again. Oops. And these will be kind of loose at first, but we're going to tighten them up, so don't worry about that. and then again. All right, so make sure that those little beads are sort of where you want them. And then to begin that crisscross macrame design, what you're going to do is you're going to start from the outside, and it doesn't matter which side, but just start from the outside of one side. Bring your string down to the bottom, and then here we have to make another lark's head, but we can't really do it the way we did it before because one of our string ends is tied up. So what we're going to do is you're going to take the loose string around, so secure the string with your finger and then bring the other end around. Bring it over and make a loop. And then you're going to take that string end and bring it up through the loop. And when you pull it tight, it makes that lark's head knot on the other side. All right, now you're going to go to the other side, to the outside on the other side. Bring that string over, crossing over the string that you've already anchored. Again, make that lark's head knot down at the bottom. So I'm holding the string down. I'm going to bring that end around, make a loop, and then come back up through. Pull that tight. And I will just keep going in that pattern. So now I'm going to working towards the inside up here. So now I'm going to go to the next string over, bring that to the outside, again, oops, let me go the same direction. So we're going to come to the left here, make a loop, push that string up through there, and then pull it tight. And then again, come back over to this side, bring this string over, and continue in that same pattern. So eventually, once you have done all the strings in this way, so always coming from the outside in right here and working from the inside out down here, you will end up with this pattern in the end. So this is sort of where we're heading, is this side of this finished one. I'm going to pause the video a little bit because I need this small hoop to show you one last design idea, and I will be back with you. Okay, let's take a look at some double hoop designs. So you will find on the internet a lot of designs that use 2 of these hoops. You can get these hoops in metal as well as in wood. I do want to point out that the wood ones do flex a little bit, so you want to be careful not to pull too hard when you're doing some of these designs. Let me show you my fancified version of what you can do with these double hoops. And so this is a design that I made using, again, one of the little birds. I put some pom-poms down here at the bottom. I left a blank space right here. And then I did sort of a figure 8 pattern to fill in the space completely, and I'll show you how I did that. I will warn you that this design took quite a bit of time. It also took quite a bit of yarn. So if you do decide to do this totally filled in design, you may actually have to go and get supplemental yarn on your own. You may not have enough in your kit, especially if you want to add fringe or any other kind of embellishments. So here I left, I made actually with the lark's head knots, a lot of fringe and just left it untrimmed on this one as a design choice. And this one you don't have to put a hanger on. If you choose to hang it this way, you can just hang it from that up there, or you could make maybe a braided hanger like I've done on the other projects. But let me show you how to do this figure 8 pattern, and then also some other options that you might have with this double hoop design. There's actually lots of different options for the double hoop, but let me show you just a few. So the first thing you're going to do on almost any of these is to secure the two hoops together. And here on this project, I have planned to go ahead and completely cover this ring with the yarn, so that's why I've gone ahead and used up the rest of my yarn in doing that. I did want to show you, I mentioned before, just tucking the ends in with your yarn needle, so that's pretty much as simple as it sounds. If you don't have another way to hide the ends of your yarn, you can take your yarn needle and just run it under some of the loops that you've made before. Get that knot sort of flattened out, and then snip off the tail. And then you would just continue on with whatever other design you had planned. So that's as simple as that. And then if you want to do that basket weave pattern, so one of the recommendations I have for this is to keep your yarn on the little cardboard piece that it came on in the kit. So here I've just taken an index card and I've folded it over a few times and I've wrapped my yarn on that. This can get kind of messy if you're trying to do your yarn, especially straight off the yarn roll. You can't really do it straight off the yarn roll. You would have to cut some off and then wrap it up in some way, otherwise you just got a big wad of yarn that you're working with. I'm going to start down a little bit lower so that you can really see what I'm doing when I do that figure 8 pattern. So I would start just by doing a square knot to secure my yarn, so that's right over left and left over right. I'm not going to worry about the end too much right now. And then to do that figure 8 pattern, I'm actually going to go to the inside first, and then I'm going to come around and go inside again, come around, go inside, come around, go inside. So you can see how that is a figure 8 going around, coming inside. And I do have the option of sort of leaving it loose like this, or I can push it all together to make that solid pattern like what you saw in my other project. So that's two different options just right there. Loose, which is actually my plan for this project, which again I'll have a picture at the very end of this finished project. So loose, or I'll push together, but just don't pull too tight, because you can see as you pull, those wooden hoops do distort. So make sure you're pulling just tight enough to keep your pattern without bending, and especially without cracking or breaking your wooden hoops. So there you can see that pattern start to form, and again, this takes lots and lots of yarn to do it all the way around. So I can't guarantee that you actually have enough yarn in your kits to do big hoops like this and to fill in all the way around. Now once you have a good bit done, you can take your yarn ends and you can actually tuck them inside. There's like a little void right here. You can actually tuck them inside that void to hide the ends. So you can see there it's coming out the other side. But eventually, if I had enough of this here, that end would be totally hidden inside. You can also do designs within here. So you can look up maybe one of the traditional spider web patterns to do inside here. I've seen that before. And you can add fringe to this. You can actually create it to where it hangs from this side, so it makes sort of a moon pattern. That's actually my plan here. So my plan here of what my finished project will look like is I'm going to wrap totally in blue, I'm going to wrap totally in multicolor and do a spider web inside, and then I'm just going to zigzag with the yellow, and then maybe do something decorative on the bottom. I haven't quite decided yet. So I will come back and show you that completed project, and I'll show you one more time all the other projects that I made just with pictures, so that you can see the complete version of all these different projects actually hanging as they're meant to hang. Alright, here's my finished double hoop design. As you can see, I did a spider web on the inside. The first step that I did do was I wrapped both the inner and the outer hoops, and then I did my interior portions. So you can find instructions for this spiderweb design in lots of places on the internet, and there are slight variations in the different instructions. I do it basically the simplest way possible, and that is you start with your thread anchored somewhere and you just very loosely go from point to point along the circle, and then when you get back around, so right here, you start going back to those threads that you've already anchored, and you'll just anchor again in the center, and you'll keep going around and around and around until eventually you get down to where your center just sort of naturally closes up, and you knot it and tie it off right here in the center. You can see that I left the yarn on the outside sort of open. I went forwards and backwards twice, so once forwards and once backwards to get it looking about this density instead of making it completely full like I did on my other design. And then I added some loose fringe at the bottom with some braids alternating. So these are just basically really, really long tassels. So I knotted it up here to hold it onto the hoop, and then left the ends really long, and then just added some braids in between. So again, you can go a lot simpler than some of my earlier designs. So this one doesn't have any pom-poms or birds added to it. You would just hang it by hanging it from right up here to make it look sort of like a crescent moon. And I hope that you enjoy adding your own design touches to these projects. So again, you don't have to make anything that looks like anything that I've made. This is just to kind of give you an idea of some of the possibilities, and there are literally dozens of other possibilities aside from what I have made today. You don't even have to use hoops at all. You can wrap yarn around cardboard to make shapes, make initials, make hearts. You can make various kinds of garlands using yarn. So please do go out and check out some of the ideas that I've put together on Pinterest. You can go out and find your own. And I hope you enjoy exploring your creative side with yarn.